Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 22 of the Broadview Podcast. We're going to talk about the seventh episode of WandaVision. So stay tuned.
And sometimes I gotta
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 21 or 22, one of the episodes of the 476ers podcast. Thankfully, we know what episode I'm talking about in WandaVision. I just don't remember what episode this podcast is. Anywho, so we are going to talk about episode 7 of WandaVision. Obviously, I'm going to do it a little bit differently today. I still have my great disorganized notes, which is what separates me from the rest, because everyone else has these huge production teams, and good for them. You know, they deserve those production teams, but they're not me. They don't have the mind of me that is able to see deeper meaning and detail into everything I look like, no matter how everything I look at, no matter how insignificant or significant. So that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to give you that perspective, a different perspective. I'm a nerd for sure, but I am also someone who is super duper metaphorical. And, you know, like when I see, you know, someone could drop something in the episode by accident, you know, like Game of Thrones, I could find meaning in the accidental Starbucks cup, you know, the way that things fall apart back then and today, you know, how today can mirror the past no matter what. It's always the same. You know, it's always the same cycle. And that's kind of what Game of Thrones tells us about Starbucks going forward. So, anywho, we're not here to talk about trash-ass Game of Thrones. We're here to talk about WandaVision. So, you know, even though it's kind of funny because a lot of what made Game of Thrones so huge and so popular, so much bigger than just this show on HBO, is really impressive to think about, because the MCU now has had, you know, 20 like massive films, a bunch of Netflix shows, now a Disney Plus show, and more shows to come up to make it be this all-encompassing universe, whereas Game of Thrones was self-contained within this show, but still spawned the same amount of content pretty much on a daily basis as the MCU, which just has more stuff. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is let's start with a basic synopsis of the show. I'll give you a quick rundown. I'm not going to do it like I tried to do it last week, breaking down the episode kind of from beginning to end. But you know what? A million channels do that, and a million channels do it better than me. Like guys like, again, I always point out New Rock Stars or Everything Always, or all those guys, Nerdist. They all go through each frame and all that. And I just don't have it. I don't have what it takes to do stuff like that. I'm not that I'm not that detailed. So, you know, essentially the show starts off, we start off with Wanda in bed looking fine as hell, essentially choosing to ignore her children for the day, which is, you know, kind of I think it's necessary, and I'll talk about that in a second, but you know, one of the first details we see is that on the blanket, there's these hexagons, you know, there's hexes all across the blanket. One thing that I noticed, I haven't seen anyone point out yet, that I found interesting, was that the design of the hexes, you know, it was a big hex, a small hex, a big hex, all kind of united. And you could kind of look at that, and in a certain way you look at it, you can see a W or an M, you know, and that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could be Wanda Maximoff, you know what I mean, right? WM. I don't know, I just found that interesting. Could be Magneto, could be Magnus, who knows, right? I just thought that was interesting, you know, like a little interesting detail I haven't seen anyone point out. You know, she goes downstairs. Obviously, the video games are changing for the kids. They're, you know, going to the ultimate game of Uno, which would separate them as brothers forever. You know what I mean? If you really want to ruin a relationship between two people, let them play Uno, and you know, you're going to draw 4 fights in the span of that game. And as she goes into the, you know, she's obviously losing control at this point of her magic. Goes into the kitchen, she grabs the milk changes. One thing that I found interesting, somebody did point out you know, there's a missing kid on the carton, and someone I thought made a really good point. I forgot who I saw make this point, but that, you know, could that missing kid, now we're seeing a lot of missing kid posters, kind of, you know, we saw that in the Spider-Man trailer, the new Spider-Man, Homeworld, the Homeworld trailer, you know, teaser is all these missing kid posters. One thing that which, you know, people have been wondering if that could be what all those kids there for Halloween were all these missing kids, maybe. But one thing I thought about, somebody did point out, you know, could this missing kid be the missing person that Jimmy Woo was looking for? But then they discarded it fast, saying, but you know, this is a kid. But what if that is a picture of him, of the missing person as a child, and that milk carton is going through the same time warping as everything else, where all of a sudden that carton goes back to the 80s when this person was a kid, let's say, and is the missing child. I don't know, just a thing I thought about to fuck with you. Obviously the cereal is called Sugar Snaps. That's, you know, pretty clear. I thought a pretty obvious thing. We jump into, and you gotta forgive me because I can't remember the order of all these things. Vision's at the circus, and he meets Darcy, and I found it interesting that they called Darcy the escape artist. That's her role in the circus, is the escape artist. I don't know, you know, is she going to be the one to help whomever get out of this hex by the end of it? Does she have, you know, the knowledge and wherewithal to figure that out? I think that's a little detail maybe that maybe could be important. Maybe it's nothing, you know, maybe it's just a reference to what she's trying to do generally. But I found that interesting. We see Monica turn into Photon, obviously, or Spectrum, however you want to, you know, I've heard different people call her different names. Photon, Spectrum, it's the same character. Just has a pretty, she's pretty powerful. She's definitely one of the, she would come into this universe as one of the stronger characters on the good guy side. You know, she's able to phase through things. She can fly, obviously, convert herself into pretty much any type of energy. I don't, you know, obviously Marvel's probably going to do it a little bit differently. Is she as powerful as Wanda, for example? You know, she could probably beat the shit out of Wanda with her hands. But, you know, because of Wanda's ability, you know, like in a fist fight, I'm giving it to Photon. But in a fight, you know, using powers, obviously Wanda's going to be more powerful. Captain Marvel's going to be more powerful. Thor is one of the most powerful people generally. Hulk, even though they've been kind of fucking up Hulk the whole time, he really is, you know, somebody who is able to destroy the world, literally destroys the world in the comics at one point. But she's up there, you know. She could beat the shit out of Captain America. She could probably beat the shit out of you know, any of the humans, pretty much. You know, that's not Captain Marvel. So she comes in as one of the more powerful mutants immediately. It's going to be, or well, you know, characters immediately. It's going to be interesting to see if she has to fight Quicksilver, what that fight would look like, since she can convert herself into energy. But she doesn't have a good handle, and I think that's interesting, right? Because one thing that I had mentioned about Professor X, now I don't think Professor X is gonna, I think that's kind of been, I'm like, it's possible. I'm not gonna say it's not possible, but I think I'm off that theory right now about Professor X coming in. But if you consider that Professor X literally throughout comics and cartoons and movies just pops up when someone's kind of fucking up with their powers or is having trouble controlling their powers, you could look at that as Wanda having trouble controlling her powers. This would be the perfect opportunity for Professor X to come in and mentor her. And Photon just got her powers. It'd be another good opportunity for Professor X to pop in and mentor her. So whatever. You know, we get the, so Monica turns into Photon. At some point in here, there's a Nexus commercial. The Nexus commercial is interesting. So you may have seen, if you watched any other videos, if not, whatever. The Nexus is a kind of a hub where all realities cross, where all the realities in the Marvel Universe cross. This hub, and additionally, there are a few characters in Marvel, such as Wanda herself, who are what's called Nexus beings. And these are people who do not change across realities. And that's a really important thing, because we didn't see Wanda in the MCU. I mean, in Marvel. All right. And I am of the, and I'll talk about Quicksilver in a second, but I do still believe that's Quicksilver, and Quicksilver immediately recognizing her would then make this make more sense, because if she's a Nexus being who exists as she is in every universe, then it makes sense that Evan Peters' Quicksilver sees her and recognizes her immediately. Whereas obviously Wanda can see him and be like, why do you look different? Right. Well, you would look different. He would look different from a different universe. She would look the same because she's this Nexus character. So I think that is interesting. Obviously, Nexus being, you know, this theoretical place where a point in, you know, time where all of these universes are, you know, a point away from time and space, where all of these universes are able to connect one central point. Did Wanda just create that? Is that what Wanda has created here? There is, as far as I know, although the No More Mutants thing, as I looked into it more, it's a little bit different. It's not that she just eliminates mutants, it's that she alters the reality to a different reality, pretty much, where there are no more mutants. You know what I mean? So, is she powerful enough to create a space like that's possible? I don't know. I think that there is a clue that New Rockstar's pointed out, which is the shape of the hex on the outside. He's like a tower. You can look at like a house, or you could look at it like a hexagon with half of it sticking out of the ground, half of it sticking below the ground, and it creating this theoretical shape that we don't that we humans can't really perceive. So maybe she did just create this nexus. We don't know. Also, when one thing that I found, this is an interesting kind of metaphor here, when Wanda and Photon first come face to face. Well, when they, whatever, face to face outside. When Agatha swoops in, she swoops in on Wanda's left shoulder. Now it's Monica's right. It's Monica's right from Monica's perspective, but from Wanda's perspective, it's the left shoulder, right? And that metaphorically and throughout literature, right, the left shoulder, that's where the devil is. The right shoulder is where the angel is. And I think that Agatha swoops into the left shoulder, speaks, swoops, then switches to the right shoulder, speaks more, and ushers her away. Kind of shows this duality of Agatha, not only here, but also Agatha from the comics. And I'll talk about Agatha in a second, but I just found that interesting, right? Because Agatha's not a devil, but if she's manipulated by the devil in some way, by Mephisto, right? She comes in on the left shoulder as this demon speaking into her ear, only to convert to the right because maybe she's bad, maybe she's good. We don't know completely. I mean, the show makes it clear what we should believe, at least. Brings her into the house. Obviously, there's also one point where the kids are in the house and Agatha can't be read. Agatha's mind can't be read by Wiccan. Wiccan, another instance of a mutant unable to control his powers, a telekinetic at that. That's important because essentially Professor X is mad. Maybe I'm back on Professor X being the guy that's going to pop in here in this bitch at some point, because Professor X is mad sensitive to any telepathic mutants. You know what I mean? And especially if he has access to Cerebro, then he is going to be he'll be able to hear what he's going through, right? Be able to hear what Wiccan is going through, and maybe pop up. So that's interesting. But we get the Agatha song, Agatha All Along. I think she's low key fine. I'll be honest with you. I've been saying that since Step Brothers. You know what I mean? But maybe that's just the perverted side of me. Anyway, that's not the point. And then we get a post-credit scene where we get Agatha All Along, which is clear when they're doing. And I did catch on to this when they were doing the interview, when they're interviewing Wanda, and Wanda's talking to the camera. The cameraman says, "Do you think that maybe you deserve this?" The voice was clearly different, right? It was a clearly different voice when I had heard it. Now I couldn't quite put my finger on. I was just like, this sounds weird. When the Agatha All Along song pops up, it's obvious, right? It was her talking just with her voice altered. Before that, obviously, Wanda's in there. She's like, where the fuck are these kids? Oh, two things. I'm sorry, before I go that far. Two animals that Wanda couldn't affect. Or that, kind of stand out. The stork pops back up. Right, and the stork is unable to be affected by Wanda's magic. He's still shaking it off, and I don't know what that means yet. I don't think that stork is necessarily irrelevant, especially if you know Agatha's story a bit. There's also the cicada in the cicadas have a ton of different meanings. I've heard different people. But here's the point: anytime you see a bug in some scary person's house or some scary shit you think is popping off, if you see a bug, shit's about to pop off. It's like when the fly flew on Mike Pence's eye. Come on. The devil. Easy. You don't really even have to think about it. If you see a bug in somebody's shit, it's finna go down. It don't really matter what bug it is. It don't matter. It could be a fucking butterfly. I'm gonna think there's something weird going on here. The Silence of the Lab cover has a butterfly. Is gonna be weird. Anyway. So, obviously the kids are now missing, and it's important. The kids are missing is an important thing, because I have a feeling we don't see those kids. We may see them again. We're just going to see them being deleted, or, being absorbed. I don't think these kids pop back in later. I think they're going to be gone after this show. And I think that the way that the show was written was so that we would not feel any connection to them. You know what I mean? That's in my opinion. I don't know about you guys. I didn't feel a ton of connection to these kids. And based on the comics, these kids are about to be gone anyway. So obviously these kids are now missing somewhere. Wanda, and it's all set up that way because Wanda wanting to essentially be away for a day from these kids and from the fake reality she's created. She wants to step away from this fake reality. And then all of a sudden she forgets about them. She's in the house and is reminded because there's cartoons on the show. I mean, on the TV, there's, these, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm not a fan. I don't like jelly. If you know me, I don't like jelly. I like peanut butter. I'm cool with peanut butter. I don't like jelly. In fact, I don't like jelly so much. I think that for a long time, I used to say I didn't like peanut butter. But now I'm realizing that the reality of that situation was always that I did not like jelly. And it had scarred me from not liking peanut butter. You know what I mean? So, I know hey, you fat. How you don't like peanut butter and jelly? Because I don't. Fuck out of here. They see the sandwiches. She sees the sandwiches. She goes into the basement. Agatha all along. Basement, creepy as hell. A little bit creepy. I'm going to jump into that in a second. Right? And boom, post-credit scene. Monica is out there. Opens up the, the cellar to go into the basement. A good detail that New Rockstars pointed out was that her license plate, that Agatha's license plate says Connecticut. And that has a real significance. We'll talk about when I talk about Agatha in a moment here. Opens up the doors, Quicksilver pops in, Snooper's gonna snoop, shoop they you. Or maybe he was playing Snoop Dogg, I don't know. He didn't have headphones in. But everyone has a song playing at all times in their head. Maybe he was playing Nothing But a G Thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway, Snooper's gonna snoop, boom. The end. Okay. So let's jump into some conspiracy that I had about the show, some details that I noticed I haven't seen anyone point out before I jump into some of the questions, some of the overarching questions. So there was the hex on the pillows I mentioned, the M and W. You know what I mean? Could that be a thing? I don't know. Just maybe there's just some symbolism there. Wanda Maximoff, this is her reality. WM, that's what I see. Those three hexagons. If you just put them on a paper and then draw an M or draw a W, you'll see it. You know what I mean? Maybe it's meant to be the same, you know what I mean, which could be connected to the way that the Darkhold is written in we'll talk about the Darkhold book in a second, but it's an ambigram, you know what I mean? It's an ambigram. If you've read any Dan Brown novels, that motherfucker loves a good ambigram. The delivery guy, we see the mailman again. Now he is no longer a mailman. He is working for Presto with a rabbit on the hat. Not only that is pretty obvious symbolism there. What I found interesting was that the costume, the outfit is blue and yellow. Now to be clear, let's look at this real quick. Wanda has been wearing colors essentially that point to her being the Scarlet Witch, right? In this episode, Agnes or Agatha Harkness is wearing purple, which is the color of her character in the comic books. Monica Rambeau breaks through when she becomes Photon, she is wearing an outfit with the colors that are just like her comic book outfit. So I think there is something to what colors they choose to assign to these individuals. You know what I mean? When somebody's wearing this, obviously Wiccan and Speed have been wearing the colors of their alter egos, their superhero alter egos. So the Presto guy has blue and yellow. Now, when I think blue and yellow, there are a couple of things. You could think of Adam, what's his name? He was teased in Guardians 1. Oh, my heavens. And Adam, oh, shit, I can't think of the name. Adam something is driving me crazy. He was teased in Guardians of the Galaxy and plays a huge role in the Infinity Gauntlet saga, which, it's interesting. We never actually see him, but they do tease him. So he is those colors. The only other thing, and I don't think it's him, the only other color, when I see blue and yellow, what do I think of? I think of the original X-Men outfits. All right, the original X-Men uniforms, blue and yellow. You know what I mean? There is blue and yellow all up and down that bitch, right? Could there be something there? I don't know. Just want to point that out. I haven't seen anyone point out. I'm just going to say it. I'm just saying it. Right? I'm not saying that Presto is a mutant. I'm saying that blue and yellow is significant. Also, along the same colors, during this little showdown between Photon or Monica Rambeau and Scarlet Witch, you see Dottie again. We haven't seen Dottie in a while, right? And Dottie is out there. She's, you know, trimming hedges, doing whatever she do. You know, devil's in the details, as she says. And she has purple gloves on, right? The only other character I can think of, well, not the only other character I can think of, but the most significant character I can think of who rocks purple gloves is a character named Clea. Now, Clea is essentially the Sorcerer Supreme of the dimension where Dormammu exists, all right, which is called the Dark Dimension, all right? So she is the Sorceress Supreme of the Dark Dimension. Now, there was rumors that Keira Knightley is going to be cast as Clea in Doctor Strange, although none of that has been confirmed. And Clea is she is not some bullshit character, right? You would think, like, that's one thing about when you're dissecting these shows and looking at this, you have to also look at the casting, right? And which is why Agatha is not bigger than I think people are making her too big, because they would never cast this person if Agatha was this, you know, wasn't. If Agatha was more important, they would cast a bigger name. If she wasn't just a side character, it's the truth. It just is what it is. And so with Clea, I don't know that they would cast the person who's playing Dottie, but you know, it is important. We don't know who Dottie is. Dottie is somebody. Could the reason why they don't know who Dottie is be because she is the Sorcerer Supreme of the dark, you know, of the dark universe? Yeah, because she essentially doesn't exist in this world. You know what I mean? And if in fact, which we'll get to the book in a second, if in fact that book is one of the things we think it is, it would make a ton of sense that she is here trying to infiltrate this to see what the fuck is going on before Doctor Strange pops in to help. So you know, purple glove, that's Clea. Obviously, people have been trying to think of who Dottie is. She Clea? Is she what's her face? I'm not gonna remember her name right now. Another kind of, you know, side superhero, who is also a you know, a sorcerer, a magician, whatever. We don't know. You know what I mean? I think Clea makes a ton of sense, but I think that it's possible that this character is not casted in a way that would support it being Clea, because you would think the sorceress supreme of that reality, that universe, right? Benedict Cumberbatch is the sorcerer supreme of this planet. You know, so you know, I mean, not that Keira Knightley is big, but Keira Knightley obviously is Keira Knightley. Dottie is been in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and a bunch of shit like that, so it's possible that she could be, especially considering what the implications of that book could be. It could be. One thing that I found interesting in Agatha's basement, I thought to me was reminiscent of the Sanctum Sanctorum, which is essentially the house where you know, that Doctor Strange lives in, and there's obviously all of these across the world that are, you know, staffed by other sorcerers to make sure that nothing is fucking up in the world. I just found it interesting. It just seemed that way. You know, the circles at the top with the symbols, then the hexagons under it. When you think about the Sanctum Sanctorum, there's the giant circle with that symbol in the middle of it. And then you have all these circles with these different symbols in it. That's what I thought when I saw it. Obviously, a darker, more evil place for these. Any place that's going to have vines, you know what's going to pop off there. I mean, if you saw True Detective season 1, they walk into a place with vines, that shit is going to pop off, man. It just is what it is. So I thought that was interesting. Those are the only things I really caught that I haven't seen anyone else talk about. You know, there's a lot of obvious stuff happening. I think some things are obvious. The next question, so what's left? The questions, right? Agatha, right? Who is Agatha? Well, let's talk about Agatha Harkness real quick. It's important to note that Agatha is not a bad guy. Now, I on last week's episode, I kind of misspoke in her role with Mephisto. All right, I misspoke. Agatha is never a villain, really, ever. At one point, she does come in conflict with Wanda. And the reason she comes in conflict with Wanda is let's actually jump back for a second to Agatha's history. No one really knows how old Agatha is. Agatha is said to have been alive before Atlantis fell, which would have been thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. At one point, she settles in New Hampshire, in the New England area, and she essentially tries to start up a bunch of different covens or witches associations to protect themselves, not to do anything evil, but to protect themselves against things like the Salem witch trials, which are heavy in Massachusetts. I mean, that's a banger. The Salem witch trials in Massachusetts is like Freeway's first album here in Philadelphia. They were bumping that up there. And so her having that Connecticut license plate, kind of really aligns that right there, right? It aligns that along with that. Um, so she settles in New England at a certain point, and she is. I don't want to say she's immortal, but she, through magic, has been alive for a really long time, and has been killed seemingly a few times in Marvel. But nope, she's back. You know what I mean? It's what Agatha does, but she's not a villain. All right, she is just somebody who is trying to protect witches, in this reality. So at one point, she helps the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four come to her house. The reason why I mentioned the animals with the stork and the fly and all that is because she has an ability to. She has a cat, which is a familiar to her. Which is, if you know anything about witches and I mean, really, Doctor Strange's cape is kind of like his familiar. Typically with any magic shit, there's a familiar which is in them. Think about what was the show with damn, what was that show with that had Clarissa in it? From Clarissa Explains It All, and she's a witch. It was on ABC Family, and they had the two aunts who were low key fine, even though they were old. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They have the cat that talks. Well, it's a familiar. So that's the case here. Her cat in the comic books has the ability to turn into a panther. She also has a son. His last name is Scratch. I think I forgot his name already. Damn it, I forgot his name. Byron Scratch? I can't remember his name. Anyway, he's an asshole. He actually tries to kill Agatha at one point. So he is a bad guy. Agatha is not a bad guy. She helps the Fantastic Four at one point. Who, they come to her. They come to her house to chill, and then what happens is some villains break in, try to take advantage. She comes and helps them. She also is kind of like a nanny for a while to Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards, if you don't know, Franklin Richards is the son of Reed and Susan. And Franklin Richards is one of the most powerful characters in Marvel. All right. Franklin Richards is able to essentially alter reality on a whim, just because if he dreams it, he sees it. If he sees it, it becomes, what I mean? It's pretty much what he does. You know what I mean? He is extremely powerful. And in the one comic book series for Onslaught, Onslaught is a combination of Professor X and Magneto, who are the two most powerful mutants in the world. Their psyches create this character accidentally called Onslaught, who, just fucks the world up. But one of the first things he does is essentially send off Franklin Richards into like another dimension away from them, because he would end everything pretty quickly. He's that powerful. She becomes she's like a nanny to Franklin Richards. Finally, at one point, she also becomes a tutor pretty much to Wanda, recognizing that Wanda's magic is created by a character named Chthon. People say Chthon. I say it's Chthon. I don't know. Chthon. I don't know. When you're missing the first syllable, what the fuck is your name then? Chthon, who is what's called an elder god. Now, an elder god. This is I don't know how elder gods fit in the respects of of the like the beginnings of the universe, like the not the Eternals, the Eternals. The Eternals is what I'm thinking of. In the scope of the Eternals and characters like that, I don't know where this elder god fits. Chthon's magic is he imbues his own magic into Wanda, because Chthon's goal is to, let's chill for there for 1 second. Let's hold that thought, just what Chthon's goal is. He does imbue his magic into Wanda. Agatha recognizes that, decides to mentor Wanda to make sure she doesn't fuck anything up, right? What ends up happening is when Wanda manifests Billy and Tommy, Agatha pops back in and is like, whoa, these kids are actually, the souls you've manifested here are actually pieces of Mephisto's soul. So, that's kind of dangerous. Those kids then get absorbed into Mephisto to bring Mephisto into this reality, essentially. And to save Wanda from that heartbreak, Agatha alters her memories so that so she'll forget it. Eventually, Wanda confronts Agatha and kills her. Except that Agatha then pops up again later. And Agatha is not a bad guy. She's never been a bad guy. She's really just been kind of helpful. You know what I mean? But the idea of her altering, right, fucking with her mind a little bit to make her forget things obviously holds true here with what Agatha's doing. We don't know what Agatha's goal is, but for the children, right? We know that. We know it's all for the children. So let's go from that, because there's one big question. We all know what the big question is. So before I get to that big question, let's jump to my next question I have written here. Is Vision still awake? Vision obviously, so Vision was obviously breaking out, right? He was breaking the hold of everything that was happening. Even calling out, obviously like the Halloween episode, he's like, well, I had no other clothes in the closet. And here's Agatha, right, with what we needed, right? Calling out the metrics of the show to everyone else, waking people up, trying to figure out what's going on. Now, I haven't seen anyone talk about this, but I found this interesting because in this episode, Vision is now sitting and talking to the camera person. Now, if the camera person is Agatha, that would mean that Agatha is able to maybe alter his mind a little bit. Because why would, if he was awake, because we know nothing in this show is happening just for it to happen, right? So Vision talking to the cameraman at, the documentary style, the Modern Family Office style, him talking to him is not just for the fuck of it. It's because he's playing by the rules of the show right now, right? And if he is truly not, if he was completely awake, why would he be abiding by these rules? Why would he have even taken the trip with Darcy to drive over there? He could fly Darcy the fuck over there, right? But he's playing by all the rules of the show. He's more comedic, and it's like he's become somewhat brain dead, somewhat numb, as if it's not even like he's become numb. It's as if the plot was rewritten in the show to include Vision like a Truman Show type character, right? Like Jim Carrey, almost a Truman Show, to include Vision's awakening as part of the plot of the show, actually. You know what I mean? And now Vision is just playing by these rules again, right? So that's why I wrote that question. How awake is Vision right now? I think it's a interesting question, because I don't think Vision necessarily, obviously Vision awakening is to the detriment of Agatha, right? It's to the detriment of Agatha, whatever Agatha's plan is, whoever's plan is. So with everything that happened in that last episode, in the Halloween episode, you wonder if it's like, you know what, instead of trying to get rid of Vision, let's rewrite it to include him. And now he thinks he's playing this role of the person who's trying to wake everyone up, except he's not. He then also, throughout the episode, becomes more more emotional and more aligned with Wanda's struggle. As he hears Darcy recant the story. I mentioned on last week's episode about how in the trailer for the upcoming episodes, there's a point where Wanda's like, this is our home, and Vision says, well, let's fight for it. Well, that's a 180 from the Halloween episode and episode before, where they were about to fight, and now they're about to fight for their home. Why? What's the 180? Well, this is the 180. They've rewritten Vision's role almost to be, more sympathetic to Wanda's struggle, and now he's going to be on Wanda's side is kind of what it feels like. Now, I don't know if that's the truth or not. It's just something I'm noticing. Why would he all of a sudden be playing by the rules of the show if he is actually awake and not and outside of that show? I don't think we've met who's the aerospace engineer. I don't think we've met the aerospace engineer. I know like there's a ton of people who got disappointed or something because they meet Major, what's her face? I'm not gonna remember her name. That's not the aerospace engineer. Monica makes it clear that the aerospace is an engineer, is a he. He makes it clear a few times. So we haven't met the aerospace engineer yet. He might still be outside of the bubble. Maybe there was an off-screen interaction that we didn't see. Who knows? You know what I mean? We haven't met him yet. I'm going to still stick with Reed Richards because Agatha does play a role with Reed Richards. You know what I mean? Agatha plays a role with the Fantastic Four, it would kind of sort of make sense. The other thing, too, to keep in mind, a lot of people are mentioning Doctor Doom, but they're not mentioning the best reason why Doctor Doom could pop in here. Doctor Doom's backstory is fantastic. I mean, he's probably one of my favorite villains. Aside from Doctor Doom being one of the smartest people on Earth, Doctor Doom is always the bridesmaid, never the bride, because he's like the second smartest person on Earth. And he's also the second strongest magician on Earth. Through his trying to resurrect his mother, so his backstory, his mom died. He has a fucked up life. His mom dies, and he goes on a mission to try to bring her back to life. He tries to do it through science and all this shit. That doesn't work. He then goes into magic, and he takes the same trip to Tibet that Doctor Strange takes, and he actually becomes the second strongest magician on the planet, essentially the second strongest sorcerer on the planet. So Magic, Agatha, Fantastic Four, could Doctor Doom pop in here? Maybe, maybe not, but it is a window for Doctor Doom to pop in. I talked about Monica's power. So who is Quicksilver? I still stand by Quicksilver is Quicksilver. I still stand by it's Quicksilver. Some people have made the suggestion that Senior Scratchy, the rabbit, turns into Quicksilver. Could that be possible? Maybe. It's possible. But I just think that Quicksilver, again, I'm gonna go back to what he says in that episode, right? And if what I just said about Vision being rewritten to work within the scope of the show, even though he's on his own mission right now, right? Could Quicksilver have been written that way, in the way, have his mind altered in such a way to be this character that is kind of outside of the show's physics, but also not, right, kind of speaking to Wanda's real personality outside of the show's confines? Could he be written that way? We know that he's being controlled by Agatha's magic. The question is Agatha's magic controlling him, or did Agatha's magic turn the rabbit into him? Again, the question here, what defeats this question is, what would be the point of bringing in Evan Peters to play Quicksilver? Again, we'll go back to casting. What would be the point of bringing in Evan Peters as Quicksilver? What would be the point? Why not just bring back Aaron Taylor Johnson to be Quicksilver again, resurrected or something? No one here can resurrect the dead. That's one thing. The second thing is, there's a specific reason why you would choose him to be Quicksilver. And I stand by, I believe that is Quicksilver, and that will be the door that opens up into the X-Men coming in. And she is just controlling him, as she has been controlling people's minds throughout this entire show, essentially. What is Hayward's plan? And I think it's pretty clear what Hayward's plan is, right? Hayward's plan is to make Vision a weapon. You know what I mean? To use Vision for the same reason that Tony tried to use Ultron, pretty much. You know what I mean? Except that you have Vision, who is already a good guy. So you don't even have to code for the possibility that Vision becomes evil. You would just use Vision as he is. Vision is really, really powerful, even though they never actually show him. They kind of take him off the battlefield immediately in Avengers Infinity War by getting him stabbed with that, whatchamacallit, but he is pretty powerful. It's not like he's a bitch. So that brings us to the question. What is the book? The book that they show in the basement. Now, in the basement, we see a couple things, right? We see what seems to be ram's horns and all types, any reference to the devil that you can think of. Fucking a thing with horns. Anything that is a thing with horns, except for bulls. Bulls are never used for devils. Always goats and fucking ox and goats and rams and shit, right? Always used as a symbol for Baphomet or the devil or whatever you want to call them. Or Mr. Scratch. Scratch is another name for the devil. It's a British slang for the devil. Senior Scratchy, could that be? I don't know. I don't think they would put the devil in the rabbit. That would be too... For the way they're going, right, to keep in mind that they're going for Multiverse of Madness, they want that to be a horror movie. Well, you wouldn't turn the devil into a funny character and then go into a horror movie. That just doesn't really make a ton of sense. I think the rabbit is some sort of familiar. You know what I mean? We also get Agnes killed the dog, which is, whatever, kind of similar. What happens to that dog in the comic books is he eats the plant that Agnes was out, which is the elderberry plant. I think it's the elderberry plant. That's what it's called. New Rockstars did a great job pointing out that that could be the plant that Agnes is sitting in front of talking to the camera and looking at this plant. And even that brings up a question. What is Agnes? Why is Agnes talking to the camera? Right? What's even the point of that? Maybe she's reporting to someone or something. I don't know, just a thought. That plant would be used to control the minds of other people. The dog eats that plant in the comic books, in the Vision comic book, which a lot of people believe this is based on, because Agatha does play a role in that Vision comic. That dog eats a plant and gets sick and dies. So what is that book? A lot of people are saying the Darkhold. The Darkhold was already introduced into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not actual canon for Marvel. And the Darkhold is essentially a book. The Darkhold is kind of a cheat. There's a million magic books, as you see in Doctor Strange's library. The Darkhold contains every spell ever written, essentially. All right, and it was made with dark magic, which is Chthon's power. Okay, so if that is the Darkhold, and Agatha is doing that, what is Chthon's goal? Well, Chthon's goal in the comics is to create the Nexus, is essentially to find a place, to find the Nexus, to bring himself into existence, essentially. You know what I mean? Because right now he, kind of like Dormammu, exists in this dark realm outside of existence. He needs a doorway. The way to get to that doorway is through Wanda to come in, okay? Now, they could probably they could just merge the story of Chthon and Mephisto. That's what Marvel's been doing. They do that a ton. Merge the stories and have Mephisto essentially use the kids, because the story of those kids is, again, they are pieces of Mephisto's soul that he grants to Wanda when Wanda manifests these two kids. He then uses those kids, absorbs them to bring himself into this reality, essentially. So could they be merging that? Could be. Some people have suggested the Druid Tome, which is an actual magic book that Wanda dealt with. Essentially, Captain America fights someone in London who is using this book. He sends the book to Wanda to investigate, and with that book comes another magician. I can't remember the name. The character is so obscure. Wanda and Vision defeat him by throwing the book in the fire, and that's the end. I think it's the Necronomicon. Now, the Necronomicon is a bit of a cheat too, because the Necronomicon is a book based off of a portion of the Darkhold. But the reason why I think it's the Necronomicon is because that book specifically is used for one reason: to bring Satan, to bring Lucifer into reality. And they do it by bringing it calls two demons into existence, and those two demons are there to call in Lucifer, essentially, to call in Satan. So that's my guess. My guess is it's the Necronomicon. They could really be putting the Darkhold and Necronomicon together, which would make sense. Because again, the Necronomicon is it's essentially like when people what is the book from the Old Testament that people be using like it's its own religion? I can't remember the book now. Anyway, it's kind of the same thing. The Necronomicon is just a book within the Darkhold. You know what I mean? But I don't think they would bring the Darkhold in now. They could. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I'm going to go with the Necronomicon just because literally the purpose of that book is to bring back the devil. I would think that Doctor Strange would have the Darkhold. You know what I mean? And that's the other thing. Could he lose the Necronomicon, a quote-unquote lesser book? Could he lose that book? The Darkhold, though, would be a book that's like, yo, this goes nowhere. This needs to stay here. For them to just lose that book, for example, would be kind of crazy to me. I would think that the Necronomicon would be the book. Now, there's been some interesting thoughts here. I'm just going to throw this last thought out here. Some people have wondered, but, again, still wondering who is going to be this cameo, this fucking Luke Skywalker level cameo. And I saw someone suggest Al Pacino. Al Pacino has been in talks with Kevin Feige about coming into Marvel in some role over the last year and a half, I think. We haven't really heard much about it, but they mentioned, there's been a lot of meta jokes here. And they mentioned the idea that, well, he does play the devil in Devil's Advocate. And we're talking about a multiverse. Not to say that they would connect the Devil's Advocate to here, but just could you see a situation where Al Pacino is Mephisto in this show, and we've seen him as the devil elsewhere. It's like this really meta joke, like a very Deadpool-like joke, and I find it interesting because, again, breaking the fourth wall, right? We see a lot of fourth walls broken, obviously, in this show. The whole purpose is talking to the cameras, breaking the fourth wall. We see Monica, when you see Monica fly through all of these walls when she first gets ejected by Wanda, she breaks four walls. What if Deadpool popped in this bitch, right? Breaking the fourth wall. That's Deadpool's whole thing, is breaking the fourth wall. That's a reach. It's a super reach. It's not gonna be Deadpool, but that's a reach. What if it was? So I don't know. They said Al Pacino. Some people have been kicking that around. I don't think it is gonna be Al Pacino, but it'd be interesting. You know what I mean? I just don't know if I can't even imagine Al Pacino right now in a Marvel movie. He's just too over the top. You know what I mean? Hoo-ah. Doing all these noises and shit. I'm the devil. Well, I don't like it. I don't think I like it. But it'd be funny because then you could also bring in Keanu Reeves, who was also in Devil's Advocate, and bring in Keanu Reeves to play Ghost Rider. You know what I mean? Now, the other thing about why it could be the Darkhold, though, real quick. Why it could be the Darkhold. The Darkhold is also heavily connected with vampires in the Marvel Universe. And we know they are bringing in vampires. Blade's coming in. Morbius is dropping, I think, this summer. Morbius is supposed to drop, and Morbius is supposed to be connected to Venom and also be connected to Spider-Man. So, the Tom Hardy Venom, which is fresh. So we'll see, and the Darkhold is connected to vampires. So just a thought, could be the Darkhold. So we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? I'm going to still stand by Agatha is at the whim of another character. You know what I mean? Agatha is at the whim of another character. She's been behind. She is the villain of this season of this show so far, but she is just working for somebody else. We haven't met the aerospace engineer. I still think Quicksilver is Quicksilver. And we're going to find out, I think next week's episode, the penultimate episode, right, is what Game of Thrones love to do. Throw all this shit in the penultimate episode. So let's see what happens. I think it's going to be great. Other than that, everyone else, stay safe. Wash your hands. Wear a mask. Wear a stupid mask because I hate your face. Black Lives Matter. Arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor. And that's it.
Sometimes I gotta, and sometimes I gotta, and sometimes I gotta, and sometimes I gotta.